How's it going, everybody? I want to talk about today the AP polls, okay? The committee, the CFB college football playoff, it's all broken. One, you got Ohio State, who has not played 6 games, who should not be going to the Big Ten championship game. They're just going to change the rules all willy-nilly. This came out today, or I think yesterday, because Michigan canceled their game. So there you go. They only have 5 wins, not going to make it to the Big Ten Big Ten championship game. So I think that the next best team that had played enough games in that division was Michigan State at the moment. So right now, if they kept the rule as it was, the 6 wins, you'd have Michigan State playing Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game. And that just sounds, clearly that sounds abysmal. It sounds like the worst thing you could ever have happen. I'm pretty sure Penn State still has a game to play, and if Penn State were to win that game, it would be them instead of Michigan State. So it would be Penn State, who's been absolutely god-awful this year, okay? Keep in mind, they were supposed to be one of the big teams. The committee saw them as another good, maybe a possible playoff team, and they've just been absolutely garbage all year. And if they would win this weekend, would be the team to play Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game, okay? Instead, you got Ohio State saying, no, talking to the Big Ten, they're going to change the rule. You don't need 6 games to play. And it's just ridiculous because you can't, they make all these rules. I know it's like the whole COVID thing and everyone's freaking out, but you can't just change something all willy-nilly because you don't like the outcome. Like, if you know Ohio State's going to make it to the freaking Big Ten championship game, and it's like an every year occurrence, right? You can't just change it when you don't like the outcome. You made the rule. You got to stick with the rule, okay? It's just the way it has to be. You can't just be changing stuff because you don't like the outcome of it. And obviously that would have huge implications on the playoff because if Ohio State doesn't play enough games, they don't go to the Big Ten. Do they really make the playoff with only 5 wins? I mean, Cincinnati's sitting out there with 7, still ready to play their championship game against Tulsa. It doesn't make sense, okay? Then the committee has the balls to go and put Iowa State ahead of freaking Cincinnati. Iowa State is sitting with 2 losses at 7th place in the polls, okay? They are 1 behind Florida and 2 behind Texas A&M. They are sitting right outside of a playoff spot, which means if they beat Oklahoma and bearing other results, they could make it into the playoff. The only reason that the committee even put Iowa State that high with 2 losses is because they're going to play Oklahoma. And they're thinking, oh, if Oklahoma beats number 7 in the nation and other results are going their way, that they could possibly put Oklahoma in the playoff. That's the only reason that Iowa State's ranked that high. Iowa State has no business being ranked 7th in the nation. They lost to Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns, in week 1. Okay, Louisiana's ranked 17th right now. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. And then you see them, they put Missouri in the top 25. They put Missouri at 25. You know why? Because it makes Alabama and Florida look better because they both beat them and now it's a ranked win. That's the only reason Missouri's ranked that high. There's no reason. Missouri's best game is against Vanderbilt, a team that hasn't won a game all season and was so bad they had to put a girl at kicker because they had no kicker on their team. Not to say there's anything wrong with having a girl at the kicker, but that's their best win against a girl who only came on the field once because Vanderbilt couldn't even score a touchdown. They couldn't even get the ball back. The only time they kicked the ball the whole game was when they got the ball at halftime, or they kicked the ball away at halftime. It's absurd. The committee, this is what I think is going to happen, okay? You got Notre Dame playing Clemson, you have Alabama playing Florida, okay? Florida is in no way, shape, or form going to beat Alabama. Their defense is absolutely terrible. Bama and Mac Jones, they're going to be up by 35 at halftime. It's like the defense is so bad. Florida has a great offense, the Heisman caliber quarterback. But they're going to get destroyed because their defense does not know how to defend. Mac Jones and Kyle Trask are both in the Heisman running. Yes, the game is crucially important. But honestly, if Florida were to beat Bama, Bama's still going to make the playoff. Florida would hop into the playoff spot probably at number 4. And Texas A&M, they're sitting there at 5th, but I don't see any way that Texas A&M will even make the playoff. They have them sitting there at 5th just because they beat Florida earlier in the season. But they're not gonna make it into the playoff. There's no point in even having them at 5th. Because if Florida wins, Florida makes it and Alabama make it. But if Alabama beats Florida, it's just gonna stay the same. And I think regardless of who wins the Notre Dame Clemson game, Okay, so I think if Clemson beats Notre Dame, I still think they're both going to make the playoff, which is just stupid. No one wants to see that matchup 3 times in a season. And then maybe if Notre Dame does beat Clemson, Clemson drops out. I still don't see Texas A&M making it because maybe Cincinnati will beat Tulsa. What I want so bad is for Cincinnati to make it into the top 4. That's all I want. But it's not going to happen because the committee just hates any team that's not in the Big Ten or the SEC. Like, Miami is sitting down here in 10th with 1 loss to Clemson. Just Clemson. And they're ranking them lower than 2-loss Georgia, who can't even find a quarterback to play for their team. The whole committee, it's driving me insane. You have, I honestly think you have 4 teams that are going to the playoff. There's only one clear candidate that I think is going to win the whole thing, and it's Alabama. Alabama is great in terms of their secondary, their defensive line. Their quarterback is great. They have 2 great running backs. The receivers are Devontae Smith is the best receiver in the country by far. You don't need to have these 4 teams play each other. It's gonna happen like it always does every year. There's one team that gets beat by 40, and then there's a team it's like a close-ish game in the other it's the Cotton Bowl and the Sugar Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Rose Bowl, whatever. But what I'm saying is, it's like there's such a far difference between, like, say, the 1 and the 4 team, and it happens every year. They always just sneak someone in there who just gets utterly obliterated, and that's why I don't understand what the point of the playoff is. There's never been like a huge, like, Alabama, whoever they play, it's like giving them a bye week. It's ridiculous. And Clemson's ranked 3rd with 1 loss, and it's basically just like, oh, if you win, you're in type thing. The way the BCS used to be, if you lose, you're out, you're toast, you're done. Nothing. You get nothing. You lost. You get nothing. And I think that the playoff is giving way too much leeway to these teams. You take a team, you give them a loss, they're out. There's nothing they can do. But they keep with this playoff system. It gives teams there's less intensity. There's less of a chance of making the playoff. It's not as important because if you're in, and you can work your way up. You can beat a team. But it takes away from the teams that have gone undefeated, that have beat these top level teams and have made it this far. And I don't understand why they need to have 4 teams in the playoff. You think Ohio State has a chance against any of the top 3 teams? You think Ohio State's going to beat Clemson, Notre Dame, or Alabama? No. I don't think they could barely beat Indiana. And they have a negative rushing game, and they only lost by a touchdown. And it doesn't make sense. I don't know how many interceptions were in that game, but there was a ton. Between I think Justin Fields had 3, and Penix, the guy, I think he threw 2, if I'm not mistaken. And, like, the fact that Indiana was the toughest game that Ohio State's had to play this year just shows that they're not in any way, shape, or form ready to play Alabama, Notre Dame, or Clemson. It doesn't make sense. They're not the same caliber of team. They lost their entire secondary to the draft last year. There's nothing they have left that could prove that they're a top 4 team in the country, honestly. But even then, going down the list of the top 25 teams, I don't think any other team poses a threat to Alabama, Notre Dame, or Clemson. And we're going to see who wins the rematch for Notre Dame and Clemson as it is. But honestly, I think Notre Dame has a good shot of beating Trevor Lawrence off again and kicking him out of the playoff. Like, there's only ever been 2 dominant teams per season that could even make a run. It doesn't... When you have this playoff, they keep giving out, like, handouts to teams that sometimes don't even have any sense of... Like, they don't have a single reason to be in the playoff. Like, you look at the Washington year, or the Michigan State year, the FSU year. All these teams, they got into the playoff and just got run over. Doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm tired of the committee. I'm tired of college football. This year, especially, has just been bad overall. And not just because of COVID, just the level of talent hasn't been there. The teams, there's such a little bit of talent in the rankings this year. Like, you look at who the most dominant teams are in each of their conferences. I mean, you look at the Big 12. The Big 12, Iowa State and Oklahoma, it doesn't sound like a big marketable game. I mean, Iowa State already beat Oklahoma once this year. No one wants to see that rematch. They don't care. The Big 12 is nothing. It doesn't matter. The Big 10, they're literally changing the rules so Ohio State can play in it because they knew their conference was so bad. The Pac-12, half the freaking teams don't even want to play because of COVID out on the West Coast. I mean, this is the year for the smaller conferences like the Sun Belt and the American Conference, the MAC and the did I say Sun Belt? Yeah, Sun Belt, Mountain West, teams like that. I mean, like, if it was any other year, they would have no shot. But the fact is that, like, Cincinnati is undefeated. Coastal Carolina is undefeated. This would be the year that they could make the playoff. This is what the playoff was made for. It was for these teams, and the committee refuses to put them in. They rank Iowa State with 2 losses above Cincinnati. It makes no sense. So if you're going to have the playoff, at least take advantage of it. Put teams in there. Make it fun for people. It's a terrible year. Make it fun for the fans. I mean, and that's all I have to say on the subject. It's just ridiculous. The committee doesn't know what they're doing, and if Florida beats Alabama and Clemson beats Notre Dame, they're not gonna know what to do. Imagine if Northwestern came out and beat freaking Ohio State. That'd be insane too. Or an Iowa State beat. Like, if a lot of these things happen, the committee's going to be all over the place. Not going to know what to do. And they're going to end up picking 4 teams that no one cares about, and it's not going to be fun to watch. That's what I have to say on the matter. Goodbye.